Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. What I'm going to tell you in this particular episode, in this particular show, is going to shock you a little bit because it's not quite what you expect. There's an impending crisis coming. And Europe is going to be the epicenter of this crisis. It's very possible that when this crisis hits Europe, and countries like Italy, France, and these countries, not just Italy, France, the United Kingdom is going to be involved in this too. In the United Kingdom, people have already been preparing, putting food away for themselves and stuff. But it's very possible that supply line distribution chains, the trucking that runs between these countries, is going to be either limited or maybe even cut off entirely when the banking system in Europe just basically melts down. But what are we going to experience over here in the Americas? North America. What's it going to look like to us? Well, this crisis is going to be very different to us. It's not going to be the same as in Europe. Europe is going to be much worse. But over here, we could experience issues in our supply line chains and in our grocery stores and everything. And what might our grocery stores look like? Well, I'm going to show you right now. Let's get started right here, and let me see. Let me get the charts open right here. Okay, and let me focus in on a few of these things. First off, this is what happens when you get a hyperinflationary depression. This is what your grocery stores start to look like. Now, if we take a close look at this, what we see is this is a grocery store from Venezuela, and they're into a hyperinflation right now. And we see when the trucks deliver, they deliver like one item. You don't get a lot of choices. Now, if you look down this left side of the aisle, what you see is all these toilet papers. But they're all the same toilet paper over and over and over again. The whole aisle is full of one brand of toilet paper. Now, on this side of the aisle, on the right-hand side of the aisle, we see spray dispensers and stuff, but it's not a good selection. It's like one of everything. It'll keep you going, but you don't have the selection we have now of all these different products and stuff, because some companies go under, other companies stay running. Other trucking firms will stay running, and they'll continue to bring ample supplies into the grocery stores. But you got to understand it's a hyperinflation, and these items are going to be extremely expensive, and sometimes certain items hard to get during this period in time. And this is probably what we'll experience, something similar to Venezuela. Let's take a look at this picture. You can see not a good selection. They have selection, but it's like you've got to take... You can see it's limited too. The front edge of the shelf is full of these particular items, but in behind there's nothing. Like they've just put one item. This is what actually happens. Let's take another look. You know? One particular item or two particular items, but not a grand selection. And these items will be supremely high in price. Now, this is what they're experiencing in Venezuela. Plus, long lineups waiting to get into the grocery store. Look at this guy here. He's looking at his watch. You know, they're waiting for the store to open so they can get in and have this poor selection, even still, but still they can eat. Now, here's what's going to shock you. People who are celebrities. Let's take a look at some pictures of celebrities here. Now, if you look at these people, they're not obese. Most of these celebrities have what's called trainers. And these are people who tell them what they should be eating and how they should be exercising. And you see, they're not morbidly obese. Most celebrities are in very good physical shape, and they're more muscle than they are fat. They develop their muscles by going to the gym and eating these foods that the trainer tells them to eat, basically. Right? And so what did the trainers basically tell these celebrities to eat? Well, let's take a look at pictures of some of the foods that they eat. One of the things that the celebrities eat, It's very expensive foods, like steak. Good cuts of steak, too. Not your cheap cuts, your prime cuts of steak. They eat. That's one of the things they like, that the trainers tell them to eat, is a diet high in protein. And so they get a lot of protein. And protein is what? It's very expensive. In Venezuela right now, it's very hard to get good, sufficient, high-quality meat like this. Let's take a look at another thing celebrities will eat, is a lot of salads, fresh salads. This is in short supply as well. And look what's in this salad. You got breast meat of chicken all carved up nice, and avocado and everything else. They eat things like this, shrimps, you know, and asparagus spears. Very expensive. But this is the kind of foods that celebrities eat. They eat expensive foods. Foods that would not be available to you in a hyperinflationary depression. You know, these foods, like I showed you, the grocery store, be very limited in what you can get. Let's take a look at what else they eat. They eat things like avocados to keep them in good shape. This is what their trainers tell them to eat, these types of foods. And things like almonds. It's very expensive. Avocados are expensive. Almonds are expensive. Hard to get in a hyperinflationary depression. But what kind of foods will you be able to get in a hyperinflationary depression? Well, more than likely, there will be a whole row in your grocery store that has breads. White breads, probably, mostly. A whole aisle of it. So it'll be available to you in a hyperinflationary depression, and it'll be in your price range. Like right now, you can go into the grocery store right now, and if you go to the day-old bread section and stuff, you can see loaves that have been marked down, and they're like $1 or something like that, you know, for a whole loaf of bread. It's a cheap food. It's not expensive like what celebrities eat. This is a cheap food. This is what you will be able to get, and what will be available to you in a hyperinflationary depression. Also, things like pasta. You'll see spaghetti will go on sale, you know, and spaghetti sauce will go on sale. And this is typically what food that'll be available to you in a hyperinflationary depression, is things like pasta and spaghetti and white bread, you know. It's fairly tasty food, but it's also, it has certain effects. Let's take a look also what will be available. Potatoes. There'll be a lot of potatoes probably available. And the thing about it is oil will still be probably within the price range of what you can buy. So you'll buy a whole gallon of oil to fry your potatoes up with. Now what does all of this do to people when they eat these kind of foods instead of the celebrity kind of foods? You know what the celebrities look like, you know, eating those expensive foods. What do these cheap foods do to you? Well, let's take a look. This is what eating a lot of cheap food will do to you. These cheaper foods are high in carbohydrates, low in protein, and quite typically, these are the kind of foods that convert in your body over to sugar very rapidly after you eat them, setting up an insulin process where your body produces more insulin, and body consumes it and converts it into fat very quickly, and then you get hungry very, very quickly thereafter, so you need more of these kind of foods. So the really strange thing about this is this hyperinflationary depression that we have coming. Instead of, you think in your mind, you think, hey, you know what? People are going to get thin. They're going to lose a lot of weight when this hyperinflationary depression comes in the United States. Well, in Europe, that might be the case. The people in Europe might quite literally not have the breads, pasta, and potatoes and things available to them. And so, because they don't have anything, of course, they will basically don't have anything to eat. And you lose a lot of weight when that happens. But if you have these type of foods available to you, oils, cheap oil, bread, pasta, potatoes, and things like that, and you eat a lot of them, you start to gain weight. So what this hyperinflationary depression might quite literally do is cause obesity across the countries where the people just can't afford to eat the kind of foods they need to lose weight and become thin. They eat instead the kind of foods that actually pack weight onto you, because this is all they have available to them when this hyperinflationary depression comes. So it might actually have a reverse effect of actually increasing obesity in the United States rather than diminishing it. And this is very strange. You would think that, but see, the thing is with food shortages where you don't have enough to eat, that's when you lose weight. But in this case, we're looking at more food shortages where there is food available, but it's the wrong kind of foods. It's the cheap kind of foods, that the only foods that Americans will be able to afford in the end. Because what's going to happen in this hyperinflationary depression is the state is going to start to do things like guaranteed income for all. And what this is going to do is going to supply an income that's going to allow these people to have enough money to go out and buy these cheap foods that causes weight gain. And so, in this kind of a situation or scenario, the people in the United States probably will end up being more obese after this hyperinflationary depression is over, whereas in Europe, it's going to have an opposite effect, because it's going to be so bad in Europe that it's very possible that they won't even be able to afford the cheap foods, or be able to get the cheap foods. Europe is going to be a very bad situation indeed. Perhaps it's better to be in a situation where you do have at least cheap food to eat, because at least you have something to eat, rather than to be in a situation where you don't have anything to eat. Let's take a look at this picture here. We see obesity running rampant amongst younger people, and in fact, I can almost guarantee you 100% that this young man walking here probably does not eat a lot of these expensive foods that are very lean and low in fat. Probably the foods available to him are high in carbohydrates, foods like Twinkies, foods like spaghetti, foods like, and these are probably the foods he likes. These are very addictive foods. These are the foods that a celebrity's trainer would tell him to avoid. So listen, hope you found this interesting. Thank you guys for listening to this show, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye, guys.